Welcome back to the Savage Sullivan Math website. Today we're going to talk about slope. There are a couple different ways to find slope, but we're going to talk about the slope formula. Now, just so you remember, there are 4 different types of slope. If a line is going in this direction, that would be considered a positive slope. If it is going in a downward trend, it's considered a negative slope. If the line is flat straight across, if it's horizontal, it has a slope of 0. And if you have a vertical line, that slope is called undefined. If you have 2 ordered pairs, you can calculate the slope using the slope formula. This is the slope formula. M is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So in our first example, if we have an ordered pair of 2, 3 and 4, 9, the first thing that you might find helpful is to label your ordered pairs. Since this is my first ordered pair, this would be my sub 1. So this is my x sub 1 and my y sub 1. Since this is my second ordered pair, this would be my x sub 2 and my y sub 2. Then all you have to do is plug those numbers in the correct spot into the formula. Now this is kind of the skeleton for the formula, so all I have to do is plug in the numbers where they belong. So my y sub 2 value is 9, so that goes in the upper left corner. My y sub 1 value is 3, that goes upper right. X sub 2, lower left. X sub 1, lower right. And now all you have to do is continue with the calculations. 9 minus 3 is 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. And simplify. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Because 3 is a positive number, I know that my graph would be positive trending. Another example would be -1, 7 and 3, -1. Again, you might find it helpful to go ahead and label your ordered pairs so you don't mix up where you need to place them into the formula. So here again is the skeleton of the formula, and now I'm just going to put in the numbers where they belong. Y sub 2, upper left, y sub 1, upper right, x sub 2, lower left, x sub 1, lower right. Now notice, the formula has a minus and my x sub 1 was a negative, so I've got 2 negatives, and we know that 2 negatives make a positive. So when I go ahead and do the calculations, I have to be very careful of that. -1 minus 7 more would be a -8, and 3 plus 1 is 4. -8 divided by 4 is equal to a -2. Because this slope has a negative, or because this calculation is a negative slope, that means I have a negative trending graph. And just so you're aware, even though these 2 slopes turned out really nicely, sometimes you can get slopes that are still fractions or even improper fractions. That is not a problem. Stick with it.
So Mrs. Sullivan did really nice examples of basic slope, but like everything in math, we have special cases. So now we're going to look at 2 examples of those. So same thing, we're going to take a look at slope between 2 given points. So what would happen, let's say, if your 2 points were 3, 5 and 3, 7? Well, Mrs. Sullivan already has the slope formula written for us. So same thing, let's start by labeling x1, y1, and x2, y2. And we're going to follow the same process. So we're going to start by putting the outline of the formula. My 2 negative signs there, my 2 subtraction signs. So we plug it in. y2 is 7, y1 is 5, x2 is 3, and x1 is 3. When we subtract, 7 minus 5 is 2 over 0. Gasp! We can never divide by 0 in math. So what must that mean? It must mean that our slope is undefined, not 0, which often is a silly sally that we make. Okay? When we look at our 2 points, we should notice something pretty peculiar there. We notice that our x coordinates are the same, which would mean that the run of my line is 0. And when we look at Mrs. Sullivan's pictures up here, if our slope is undefined, that must mean it's a vertical line. And as we learned in class, the equation of a vertical line is x equals. And since our x coordinates are the same, this line must be the line x equals 3. So that is an example of one of our special cases. Another example of a special case would be with a point of 4, 6 and -2, 6. So same thing. Let's start by labeling our points. x1, y1, x2, y2. Let's put our skeleton of our slope formula. M equals the line. And let's plug our points in. So y2 is 6, y1 is 6, x2 is -2, and x1 is 4. And when we simplify this, we are going to get 0 over -6. And anytime we have 0 in the numerator of our fraction, we know that it would be 0, which means our slope is 0. And when we look at Mrs. Sullivan's diagram, we see that a horizontal line has a slope of 0. And when we think about what we learned, we know that the equation of a horizontal line is always y equals some number. And when we look at our 2 points, we see that the 6's are the same, and they're in our y spot, which must mean that our equation is y equals 6.